Are they coming in kinda choppy for anyone else? It's, the visual's okay, I'm just curious about the audio, if you yeah, if you check, if you go into Discord and you go into settings, a and you head under, voice and video, um oh, hold on, I gotta close down Twitch because 'cause I'm jamming myself, okay. Um, yeah, if you head to the settings, voice and video under Discord, and you check the input sensitivity, you probably will wanna disable the automatically determine input sensitivity, and then just make that like, bring that probably all the way down, so that way pretty much the whole bar is green, and then that way it should pick up everything, like, it'll basically never be off.
There's no more audio.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Fantastic time. The game was made primarily by a bunch of Michigan State University students at their top 10 game design program. So it's super cool, a great moment for them. Yes, and it won a bunch of awards as well. So please, if this looks interesting, consider grabbing a copy and checking it out, okay? And we'll be hearing a little bit more about this game in just a bit. Prepare. We have another game, Mage Quit, made by Bullcut Studios, Brett Pennings, and the game just launched on Nintendo Switch, I believe today. So let's watch the trailer for that really quickly. Alright, so Mage Quit, an awesome kind of competitive multiplayer party game. Every single round you get new spells, your beard gets longer, and it is a very good game. I believe 8 players. So the multiplayer games just keep getting bigger. It's awesome stuff. Alright, so I believe that is just about it. Does anyone have any community announcements they'd like to say before we get started with Adam? No? Go for it, Nikhil.
Wolverine Soft meetings will be resuming on the 30th. We're going to be having a team from Inks 494 who went off from their final project to make their own indie studio. They're launching their own indie game, I think this winter.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did they find a publisher?
I think they did.
Oh, that's fantastic. Lights Out Studios.
Yes.
Fantastic 494 team. Excellent. Thank you. All right. Are we good to go? Adam, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready when y'all are.
All right. Hey, Adam, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to see your talk. Go ahead and share your screen when you're ready and go for it.
Great. Let me share my screen. Yes. Go live. Can everyone see the title of my presentation? We're all good. Great.
We're also this mic
first of all, I just want to say thank you to IGDA and Austin for inviting me to this presentation. Talking about video games and talking about what I do is like my favorite thing to do. So this is a big honor and pleasure for me. And so I'm going to tell you about some stuff. So, kind of my presentation today is called Love Video Games, a story on how you might get your start in the games industry. And so I'm hoping to give a little guidance to folks like a lot of y'all are students, or maybe you're starting out in the games industry and you're trying to find sort of how you might navigate your way in working in video games full time in some or all of your capacity. And so I'll be talking a lot about my story and how I got here and maybe some lessons I learned along the way. Click
on the actual
window.
There we go.
So first of all, hi,
hey, I'm Adam. I am originally from Dallas, Texas. I then flew all the way up to the Midwest where, it snows. It doesn't happen a lot in Texas. And I went to the University of Michigan. Go Blue. I'm wearing my Michigan t-shirt, as you can see. I very much miss Ann Arbor. Meaning come back for game day. I'm very envious of all of you that are there now, despite the rain that is currently going on. I went to Michigan, I was a pure science student, and we'll get more into sort of my journey through that and how I got from regular software engineering to making games and that kind of thing. Some of the things about me is I run my own little independent game studio called Konig Games. I have a website, Konig.games. It's a whole URL website, very sleek, I know, thank you. And then I currently work on the Xbox team at Microsoft, and I will of course get into what I do at Xbox specifically, and what my day-to-day kind of looks like on that job, and how I got there. So, let's jump into it. So you guys are probably wondering, how do I get into the games industry? And the answer is, oh, come on, slides. Luck. And that's it. Thanks for my talk. I hope you appreciated it. Of course, I am joking, but I do think luck plays a very big role. And I think the way I look at opportunity in life, and especially in the games industry, when you're looking for jobs and such, is the quote, I forget who said this, but opportunities like buses, there's always another one coming. I really do believe that, if you're not ready for a certain bus, there's always another one around the corner. But I sort of add the caveat that you have to be ready to hop on the bus, whatever capacity that means. In this case, I think being ready to get on the bus, having your bags packed, having your bus fare ready, that is all about sort of building your work portfolio and who you are, and being ready so that when an opportunity comes along, like you are the person for the job and they want you on it. And so I'm not going to use arrow keys today. Some hard to swallow pills here. Breaking into the industry is very, very hard. It's very competitive. I would say more so than other fields that you could potentially work in as your full-time role. Because as y'all might relate to, you probably love video games, and that's probably why you want to work in video games, why you like making video games. And unfortunately, you are not the only person out there who feels that way. Video games are growing day by day. More and more kids are growing up with like their favorite video games, aspiring to be like people who make those big titles. And so it's legit. There are people who want this really bad, as I'm hoping you do. And so when you get to things like at the bottom here, we have a snippet from a random entry-level role at Big Fish Studios, which is a publisher here in Seattle. And one of the things is experience with the entire development life cycle from gathering requirements to launching, assuming that means for a full video game. And there are a lot of entry-level jobs where they have ridiculous things like, we require 8 years of experience, even though you just graduated college, you had one internship. Like those things we can kind of laugh at and say that, maybe they're being a little, too hopeful. But I really do think that nowadays, being able to having a game even under your belt, no matter what you want to do in video games, is kind of a requirement nowadays, which is tough because, as you can see in this meme that I've created on the right, you're going to have to put in work outside of school and your jobs to consider game rules, which I realize is not an especially helpful sentiment to an industry that already deals with a lot of issues, overworking employees, and not crunch, all those kinds of things. But I have found that has been a very helpful part of building my portfolio, is doing these sort of projects outside of work. And we'll talk about some things that I've done and how you can get started with that is a route you want to go down. So we'll start my sophomore year at Michigan. The fun story was that I went to the fall career fair. I was planning to work at summer camp that summer, so I wasn't really looking for a job, but I was like, I'll just go and ask around and see what employers are looking for nowadays. And I saw that White Games recruits at Michigan. I don't know if they still do, but they were a pretty recurring company there. And I knew what League of Legends was, so I would talk to them and I said, what are you guys looking for when you're looking to hire someone from Michigan? And they said, one, they wanted to be a science student, they wanted to improve the program. And two, they wanted someone with good experience making games. So to that I said, how do you make games? And they said, you should pick up a free game engine such as Unity, which was the first time I've ever heard of Unity. And I've been using Unity for like 6 years now. And it's great, and I'm shocked that I never heard of it prior to that day.
And so throughout sophomore year, I'm in each 280 with very little programming experience under my belt. I scrapped together this very basic platformer called Pingless. And it is awful. It is a very bad game. The collision is bad, sometimes your inputs don't register. As you can see, the art assets are all over the place. We've got like pixel art platforms, we've got gear icons from a random asset bundle for the flowers. Whatever, I don't know what Pingus is, he's like a star. He has a shadow, he's a 2D sprite, and he rolls around, so the shadow moves around him. It doesn't make any sense. You've got effortless clouds. It's a very weird game. And the other game I made that year was called Space Survivalist, so I sort of started doing this exercise where as I was learning, I would do a unique tutorial, I would learn something from the tutorial, so for example, Space Survivalist, it was how to make like projectiles and stuff, and then I was like, okay, I'll make a game based on this new thing that I've learned. So Space Survivalist is just like your ship, you fly around and you shoot asteroids, very basic stuff. But the reason I emphasize that Ping is such a good game, and it was my first game, and to some degree you just like kind of get something out so you have something to show for it, is that Ping is still my highest performing game of any of the games that I have made in like 6 years of doing this. And it's how I can't remember the house. That's so funny. I'm laughing at my own joke. It's also hilarious because it's not even that it's been up the longest, and that's why it has the most downloads. When I tell new people that I met that I made games, they go to my website, and they see all the games that I made, and Pingus is at the bottom of the list, because it's the oldest one, it's reverse chronological order. And they scroll through all of them, and for whatever reason, they're like, I want to play Pingus. And I don't know if it's the name or the art style, but people love Pingus. People still send me screenshots of their times on different levels because they just want to see how good they are. So let that be a lesson in that, like, it doesn't skills and effort don't necessarily make a good game per se. What makes a good game is very ambiguous. Anyway, moving along, if you are looking at certain games, this is one of my favorite videos. I rewatch about once a year from YouTube channel credits. It's just about how to make your first game, and I still keep rewatching it even though I don't need this advice anymore. Because it's just a great like reminder about like, you know, taking your time and like caring for yourself and setting like realistic goals. It's great video. I highly recommend it. That's just my little plug for this channel that I love a lot. So moving right along, let's go into my junior year. I decided that I wanted to publish Pingus Survivalist onto the App Store. But to do so, you needed a support website. And so that forced me to create my own website, which was Konig Games. On the right there, that is what the website currently looks like. I don't have an image of what it originally looked like, but it was so ugly because I had one semester of a UI class at Bell, and so I thought I could craft a website from scratch with just HTML and CSS. And it looked like a website that was created like in the .com era, like the beginning of the internet. And it was awful. I just discovered that you can get HTML templates and make things look a lot nicer, and that's what I say now. But it also became great because that became a portfolio that I could send to jobs when I applied. And if you ever have applied to gaming roles, you'll find that a lot of them ask you for a website. And someone expects you to have one. So this is a great place for me to have stuff. If you don't know how to have a website, that's totally fine. HTML is great. If you've not heard of it, it's free. You can publish games on WebGL. You can publish Windows executable files or Mac executable files, and you can charge for them if you feel like your game is good enough to deserve money in exchange for it. And so that was that. And I want to talk about my ultimate internship at that summer, which was at a company called Prospect Entertainment in Dallas, Texas. And you may think to yourself, like, oh, well, that's great. Junior year, you got an internship at a game studio. That's awesome. You must be like so good at this, Adam. So I will back up that story a little bit and explain that junior year, I applied to so many jobs. I would get to career fair like an hour before. I would get in line. Big companies, very hard to have to wait too long once the career started. And just like rejection after rejection. I did an interview at a couple places like Texas Instruments. I reviewed a Riot actually that year, and I bombed that interview because the interview question they gave me ended up being the 281 project that I did like 3 weeks after the interview. So the timing was just really unfortunate with that one. I remember that very vividly, and I'm still mad about it a little bit. But just so many rejections all year round. The only offer I had on the table by the middle of the year was to work at the bank Charles Schwab in Texas. And it was because they reached out to me on LinkedIn, and they gave me the job through a like 30-minute conversational, non-technical interview. At the end of the day, a job's a job, and I would have definitely worked there. But it didn't like feel like I deserved it. I feel like they was like looking for someone to kind of fill the role. And so I had 8 internships lined up, and I thought that was all goodness. And we get to the end of the year, and someone took us to the studio, and I reached out and I talked to someone, and they gave me sort of a very brief screening, and they gave me an offer, and I'm very grateful for it because this was like the week I was moving out of Arbor. Like I had my plan set to work at Charles Schwab in like a few weeks, and they just out of pure luck sometimes, I think. I got an offer to be an intern there. There were 2 interns that summer. I kind of think, honestly, they do internships out of the goodness of their heart, not because they really need interns. But it was very nice of them to have me anyway. And they offered me far less compensation than Schwab offered me, because Schwab is a bank. And they can do those kinds of things. So I reneged my offer at Schwab, and I went to work at Boston. And I don't regret it, because that was an awesome summer, and I learned a lot. And I worked on Untitled Boss here, Image, and a lot of the work for that game exists nowadays on server side. We don't do a whole lot of client updates, but we have boss fight, we don't work anymore. They do a lot of work server side, not client side. So what that allows you to do is that people can take an update. You can change the game on the fly daily. And so that was pretty cool, getting to work on a game where I could make a change, and the next day it would begin the game for players to play. So very cool and very grateful for that experience. But I do attribute a lot of that getting that internship to being like luck and timing. Like it was the end of, like I shouldn't even been applying to jobs anymore. It's the end of the school year. Just like happened to shoot one more application out there and it paid off. So to play back to what I was saying earlier about luck, like sometimes just get lucky, something happens. But so that was your junior experience. The summer of that junior year, though. As I'm working there, I set a goal in my mind, and that was that I wanted to work on Xbox. Because I was like out of companies that I think hire a lot of people, and that do things that I want to do. Microsoft is a big one at Michigan, and they obviously own Xbox. I also could have maybe like thought I wanted to work at like Oculus, Facebook. There's a lot of similar size company to thing you work on. Sort of situation. But I thought it was going to set sort of a huge high level goal. So we're on Xbox, and so the thought was, well, if we're going to work on Xbox, what can you do to make yourself look like a good Xbox candidate? And the answer in that case was to make a game for Xbox. So that summer I made this game called Mutants Third. I learned how to do like plug in a controller and take inputs. I remember very distinctly over the summer on the weekends when I wasn't doing my internship, I would be at Starbucks with my laptop, and I would just like be working on this game, by myself, figuring out things. The game was essentially Super Smash Bros, but if you had rocket launchers, was the idea of the game. And I eventually got working with multiple controllers, and so I found this clip. I couldn't find it for a while, but I had some friends over that summer, and we sat around and we playtested it. It was really fun. And I recommend that. If you've not made a game before for multiplayers, it's a great experience. Invite your friends over and play your game. And it was cool. It was great. I had a great little stamp on my resume of something to tell them when senior year rolled around. Come on, next thing. There we go. So let's move on to senior year. In chronological order, I did interview at Microsoft earlier in the year, and as you can probably guess, I got the job. But we're going to come back to that in a minute, because I want to finish rounding out my school projects before I get to the story of this whole Microsoft thing behind it at Xbox. So senior year, I decided after I got that job that I wanted to make one kind of personal magnum opus of my Michigan experience. And I was sitting out with some friends in my apartment, and I said, I have an idea for a game. It's called Scare Keepers. It's like Scorekeepers, but it's scary because it's a zombie survival game inside Scorekeepers Bar and Grill, which I'm hoping all the people who are in Arbor watching right now know what that bar is. It's a pretty popular bar, I've heard. Never been myself. Joke. Anyway, so I decided to make this game. It was a really fun project. I worked just like 1 month. I just set like a hard bound to like 1 month to work on it. It was also my first game that I did all the assets for myself. So I did all that pixel art, all the animations, all the programming, I even composed the music. I did the sound effects. If you listen very closely, you hear that it's my voice doing the like hurt hits, like all the different sounds and stuff. Doing zombie sound effects is always fun. But that one got a large positive reception from a lot of friends at Michigan. Because they just thought it was hilarious that I made a game with Steeps. And then also junior year, I took Austin Yarder's Eek 44 class, which to this day, and I'm not saying this because he's there, was my favorite class I took at Michigan, which should be no surprise. Good. And so the first project we did for that was we recreated Legend of Zelda, which I'm not sure that's still the intro project for that class. But the second project was that you had a couple weeks to just make a game with any mechanic you wanted. So I made Lunar Encore, which was a game where you're just a little platformer and you have the ability to like push away objects or pull them close to you, and it's kind of a puzzler kind of situation. Unfortunately, I already had everything set up to publish to the App Store at this point. And so it was really easy to just port that for iOS and publish that. It's just another tack on my resume, another project. And then of course, our final project with me and my group mates of 3, Ben, Keith, and you, who I still keep up with. So please keep in contact with your group mates. Buccaneer Booty Battle, a top-down. I don't even know what genre to call this game. A top-down party boat battle game where you shoot cannonballs and you try and collect coins and try to shoot them into the living chests in the middle of the cove. I will let our trailer speak for itself. I think that's the best way to describe this game. I believe Austin still shows the students, and I am unashamed and very proud of this trailer. And I hope you enjoy.
Oh no audio. Oh, Adam.
There is audio. It's just really quiet.
Adam, you can't hear us.
No sound coming through. It's not the stream volume.
Yeah.
The sound is working.
At least for the remote Discord people.
Interesting.
So we can't hear it right now.
Oh, you're right. Good catch.
Oh.
Well, I will play it for the Discord people. If you want to.
Restart.
I look on the presence, but I believe they're muted over there.
Restart.
Restart. Okay. So that was our trailer. That was, if you put enough engineering students in the basement of the dude and you just make them stay up long enough, this is what comes out of it. And we're very proud of that trailer. And I often show it to people because I think it's hilarious and very, very cute. And that was the senior year experience. Oh, no. All right. So let's back up a little bit back to the Microsoft thing. So the beginning of senior year, I applied to work at Microsoft. And this whole story, everything I'm gonna tell you is important. So I, got the career fair early, got in line, was waiting to talk to someone at Microsoft, and I had my resume ready. I had my Xbox game that I was going to talk about and be like, I want to work at Xbox. Here's a game that I made for the Xbox console, all this stuff. And as I get closer, someone who worked there last summer pointed out oh, you need to talk to Greg. he's the guy who recruits for Michigan, who works on specifically Xbox. And so I like made sure to like time myself out so I could talk to him. I don't know, that would have made a difference, but I thought it was a nice add-in. And I actually ended up talking to him at work once I started, and just to give him sort of a thank you for being a great recruiter and getting me to some degree this job. And he is very nice, and so it's nice too. If you ever do have that experience, please reach back out to people who recruit at Michigan, who maybe got you a job somewhere, because it's a very nice thing to do. But so I go to him and I'm like, hey, I'm Adam. I'm really passionate about gaming. I've been making games for about 2 years now. Here's some of the games that I've made. I have Cleansing My Phone if you want to play them. I made this game for Xbox. It's called Newton's Third, et cetera, et cetera. It goes well. I get an on-campus interview. My on-campus interview is with this guy, Steve, who I also have chatted with now because he still works at Xbox. I meet with him. He's a Michigan alum. He works at Xbox. We have the interview, which I'm like, I make games. I'm really passionate about gaming. Like, this is my thing. And he's like, that's awesome. I work at Xbox. Everything is going great. I'm like, hell yeah. Like, I'm going to work on Xbox for sure. And then that goes great, and I get an on-campus interview. And so Microsoft flies you out. This is prior to things being virtual, because there's a bit of a virus going around. And so I was flown out, and I get to my on-site interview, and they give you name tags. And on the name tags, there's like little colored buttons for which org you are going to be interviewing for. And it's not until my third interview. And keep in mind, for these interviews, at some point in the interview, they're like, tell me about yourself. And I'm like, I'm Adam. I'm really passionate about video games. I make video games. By the third interview, a guy stops me and he goes, you're interviewing for Core Services, Engineering, and Operations, right? And I said, I don't know what that is. And so I am like very uncomfortable. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm already here. I just got to like do my best. But like, this seems like I was not slated to go interview for gaming. And I'm not sure why to this day, and it's no way for me to find out. But so the interviews go well, though, and I still end up getting extended an offer. And they don't tell me what team I'm going to work on, because this was in November, and the job was to start in August of the following year, which is also no one's fault. University recruiting is a complicated thing because students don't start right after you interview them. They start after their school year ends. And so I get to Microsoft, and I meet this guy named Praveen, and Praveen is like, hey, I'm going to be your manager. Our team works on supply chain. And I was like, okay, not really my thing, but like, I'll have a positive attitude. I'll try to do my best about it. And I work on there for a little bit, and no disrespect to those people. They were so nice to me. They were so helpful. But supply chain was just not my thing. And I could not bring myself to really like care about this project that we were working on. It was something with like processing data so that we could tell like how many devices were being returned to return centers, and then it was just stuff that I just was simply not into. And also sort of the attitude of the team was just much slower, and like we didn't really have deadlines for things. You kind of just worked on stuff as quickly as you could, but there wasn't really a sense that what we did was important to some degree, which was kind of a bummer. And so at my first meeting with Praveen, my new manager, he said, why do you think you're on this team? And I said, can I be honest? I don't really know. Like, and I, told him this whole thing of really passionate about video games, and I, been making video games for a while now. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, you should switch teams. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. This is your career. You're very early in your career. You're clearly very passionate about this. And you should pursue your passions. Like it's too early for you to, start working like a job that you don't care about. And I was like, wow, that's really nice and very unexpected, given what you think about like corporations and managers and all that kind of stuff. And so with Praveen's blessing, I started applying for jobs internally at Microsoft. And I had like daily alerts coming to my inbox of openings with like the keywords gaming or Xbox Game Studios. And I applied to a bunch of stuff. I applied to roles on like the Windows graphics team. I applied to roles at the Xbox Game Studios. Some of them ignored me. Some of them talked to me, but then were like, no, you're not a good fit. Some of the roles just like went away. They were just like, oh, we're not hiring for this role anymore. I was like, okay, thanks. And then just after a while, maybe 4 months or so, there was an opening on Xbox for what was at the time called the Core UX team. And so I, send them my email. I go and chat with one of the guys. It happened to be from my level, which also doesn't happen a whole lot internally. Usually people internally switch. Hello, are we still good? My Discord just like closed and reopened.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, cool, great. I'll reshare screen. Cool. All right, I think we're good. Great. But yes, there's an opening for the Core UX team at Xbox, and I applied. It went well. I interviewed, and it just went well. It was some. It's a little bit annoying to have to re-interview at a company that you already work at, but that's how it goes sometimes. And it went well, and I got the job. And I started in January of 2020. And so I got a great 3 months in the office, and then we went remote forever. But I've never looked back. I really do love my job, and we'll talk about what I do. But the best advice I've given to people about this whole story is just that, like, especially when you're early in career, like the advice Praveen gave me, which is that, like, you should work on what you're passionate about. If you have a passion, you should absolutely follow it. There's so many people that I chat with that have the sentiment of like, oh, I'm just like doing my due diligence right now until I can switch to a better job that I like more, or like, I'm not trying to leave this company until I get like this promotion cycle that happens every 2 years. Like you end up just like killing so much time in jobs that you don't care about or that you don't want to do, because you think you like have to, obey by these like kind of arbitrary time cycles of promotions or what's appropriate. And it's not to say that you shouldn't be like kind to people that you work with and try to do your best on different projects. But if you have a passion, you should follow it. You should do it as quickly as you can, in my opinion. So let's talk about what I do. I work on Xbox, which is an awesome job. It's a very cool product if you've ever heard or used of an Xbox. Our team owns some core components of the operating system. Not this homepage. Our sister team owns this page. But we own the settings menu, we own the sign-in flow, we own the out-of-box experience. So when you first turn on your console, like, hey, what's your internet? What is your language? What is, sign into an account, set your privacy options, all that kind of stuff, which is a really cool job because you get to touch a lot of cool things. And because you end up working with a lot of other teams, notably right now I'm working with the audio team because they have a bunch of new features they want to push out onto the console. And so I am the front-end engineer who gets to make the pages and buttons for them, to toggle all these cool things they're doing at the sort of lower level of the system. And that's a really cool part of it. Another cool part of my job is that every Thursday we get something called hack time, now called exploration time. And what hack time is every Thursday you get the entire Thursday afternoon to work on a feature that you think is going to be good for Xbox to some degree, whatever you want. And it can be stuff that's not officially slated to be like in an upcoming release. Most of the features we work on, someone higher up has decided this and they pass it down to us and then we just get told to work on it. But we do get this thing called hack time. And so one of my coolest hack time projects was this background called the Mercury background, not this wavy one, this one with the cool flowy kind of goopy lava lamp effect. And not only did I make this, I designed this background. I saw a video on a random day on how they make the water shader for Super Mario Galaxy. And they talked about how they use displacement shaders, and using that video as a guide and kind of some rough knowledge that I had personally of just how shaders work, I made this shader for Xbox, and I designed it and I crafted it up and I sent it in to some designers for review, and they gave me some tweaks. They were like, this should be brighter, this should be darker, it should move slower, it should move, it shouldn't pan around, whatever it was. And I made tweaks. And then eventually, I sent it for a review and they're like, this looks great, let's launch it. And now this background is on every Xbox Series S and X around the world, which is a really cool flex. I gotta be honest, not to toot my own horn. But you know, it's very rare that I know people my age and at my level that get to work on such customer facing products and get to work on features that like they both came up with and made. And so I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm not trying to just like brag to all of you, but it's very cool to work at a place that allows me to do these kinds of things. That's what my job is, and that's why I love my job so much. Anyway, some other stuff that I've done post grad is like I've continued to work on games. I do a lot of game jams now because, you know, in college, you don't always want to spend your whole weekend inside coding. You usually want to, like, you know, hang out and see friends and do things. But post grad, that's it. That's a great weekend activity for me. And so after college, I've participated in a lot of game jams for Ludum Dare. The Ludum Dare jam happens twice a year. It's one of my favorites. The first one I did was this game called Oh Dam. You play as a beaver and you make dams and you try to block bombs from blowing up your dam. In the beginning of the pandemic, Game Maker's Toolkit made a game jam, and so me and my friend Sutton, who also works at Microsoft and is also a Michigan alum, made this game called Unplugged, where you play as a robot, and every time you use your blast power, you lose one of your directional controls, and then you restore it after a little bit of time. Not an especially fun game, but definitely interesting. The next Ludum Dare, I made a game called Pollinate, where you play as a little bee, and you fly around, and you pollinate flowers, and you carry a little bee-sized bucket, and then you dive into a well, and you scoop up water into your little bee bucket, and then you pour the water on the flowers to grow them. That was a fun one, and people love that one. And then I participated in Global Game Jam in 2020 in January before the pandemic, which was in person, which was very cool, with some other Xbox devs, which was also awesome to work with some coworkers. We made a game called Duct. And Duct is a game where you play as a roll of duct tape, and you are in an air duct, and you try to duct tape the holes in the air duct as a roll of duct tape. And then lastly, the most recent game jam was Global Game Jam 2021, which was virtual. And I worked with a new friend of mine named Jeffrey, who's an aspiring game audio engineer. And I made this game called Secondhand Weaponry, in which you every round you get to pick weapons and armor from a lost and found bin that will randomly give you a weapon or piece of armor that's either better or worse than what you currently have. And so that was a fun little mechanic to work on. And that's just some of the other stuff that I've worked on nowadays. And I made a lot of non-game jam projects as well post-college. On the left there, you'll see apples, just a very basic game where you catch apples as a basket. That was the first game that I had 3D modeled all by myself, which was another fun skill to learn on your own, just kind of in your own time. Football the Game came out because the reviews for Madden 21 were like 1 star. And I thought to myself, I'm going to make a better game than Madden. And so I made a first-person football game that I called Football the Game. And you could like make plays, and you could like from the first person like aim and throw passes and stuff. Sheepdog Simulator was cool. I saw a video on how to make Boids, the like artificial intelligence behavior, and it causes like game objects to move like a flock of birds. And so I applied that model to sheep. And so you can play as a dog and you run around, you bark at them, and they fly around their little flock, kind of like birds. And so that was really fun. Just kind of more of a prototype than anything. And then an airport game, which is my favorite game that I've made thus far. I've worked the longest on it of any of my projects. It is a top-down RPG that takes place in an airport. And the premise was, what if you were in an airport and every conceivable thing went wrong? You know, they try to charge you for an extra bag. TSA stops you for having shampoo. You're waiting on food, but the line's getting long and your flight's coming up and you're not sure if you should wait for food. All the like tropes of like going to an airport come to life in an RPG. And so that one was really nice and fun to make. Also, I got to design the entire dialogue system. I got to write the dialogue for it. I got to name all the characters. So there's a lot of personality in that game, and I really like making stuff like that nowadays. And you may be asking, Adam, that's a lot. Aren't you exhausted? And the answer is yes, I am exhausted. I do this all the time. I work a 9 to 5 where I program all day. And then after work, I find somehow the power to continue to program at night on my own personal projects. But the reason I do it is because I love video games. And I'm sure most of you do too. And that's why you're at an Independent Game Developers Association meeting. Because this is an unbelievable medium. It's so beautiful, all the things you can do with it. I often say to people, there was a sentiment a couple years ago that was like anyone with a laptop can be a DJ nowadays. And I do think that's true. Like, audio software has gotten good enough and is so free and accessible that like anyone can kind of be a DJ nowadays. I think the same has become true about video games. There are such good engines and resources and stuff out there to where like if you love this and you want to do it, like you can do it. There's not a whole lot in your way. And of course, that's easier said than done. I understand people have jobs and they have school, and it's not always that easy. And to be frankly honest, like a lot of the skills you have to learn are not fun to learn. The Blender beginner tutorials are the single most boring videos I have ever watched in my whole life. But if you want to learn how to 3D model, you got to trudge through and you got to find time to do it. But on the right there, you see a lot of great indie games that I have come to love over time. Omno just came out on Game Pass, which I played through, and it was made by a single developer, which is a really cool feat given how it looks just in that screenshot. Undertale, Outer Wilds, A Short Hike made by another developer named Adam, so shout out people named Adam. But the passion and energy around this industry is really incredible. And kind of like I was saying earlier, when I talk about when I was saying how there are people on that old team I was on that were like kind of just like, oh, I'm just like here like doing my due diligence, like I'm only gonna stay here for a year and then I'm gonna leave. When I work at Xbox, when I go to work and when I talk to people who work on Xbox, that is like the furthest thing from how they feel about it. The people that work on Xbox, the people that work in game studios, pretty much across the board, I've found, have a very personal vested interest in the success of these projects. It means so much to them, like the cons that I've heard about from working at game studios is that people argue a lot because they all have very strong opinions about what should go in the game, what shouldn't go in the game. And if you're asking me if I would rather work in an environment in which everyone is so passionate about this project that they're willing to argue about it, or work on a project where you can't even motivate half your team to like care about it a little bit, I'm going to take the first option all the time. And that's true at Xbox too. The people that I work with have been on Xbox for like 15 plus years. My manager was there when they launched the original Xbox One in 2012. It's nuts, the passion and dedication people have to this industry, and how much they care about it. And so, in conclusion, I would like to close just by saying, like, it's very hard to break into the games industry. And that's because so many people love this medium. They love what we aspire to do, and they want to aspire to do the same things. And there's just simply not enough places for all of us to do it sometimes. But I like to operate off the idea that, like, if this is your dream, shouldn't it be something that you want to work for? Something that you, like, want to put in the hours, because that will make it all worth it. It'll make it feel like you're striving towards something, harder to achieve than other people. And again, I don't want to, I really, really don't want to add to the narrative that like game devs have to overwork themselves and they have to, do crunch and, stress themselves out and like not care about their mental health. All those things matter. But I have found, if you're wondering how I finish my day job and then I go work on video games afterwards, I really enjoy it. It is actually the relaxing part of my day, which may sound insane to some of you. To just like sit down, put on some music, put on a project that like I worked on, and just do something on it. Nothing like, I don't work like crazy hours on my personal projects, but I'll sit down and I'll like make a running animation for a character and then be like, cool, I'm done for the day. And if you treat it like that, I think it becomes a very enjoyable hobby and not a stressful one. And then your eventual goal is to make this very enjoyable hobby like the thing you do every day. And I can think of no better way to live my life than to do those kinds of things. And that's it. Good luck. Have fun. Follow me on all the stuff on the bottom right here. And I'm here to answer questions if anyone has anything to ask.
Corbin, unmute us.
I'm working on it.
You're muted, Austin.
A lot of things to unmute. A lot of things to unmute.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Adam. You represent us so well out there, and a great talk.
Thank you.
All right, so if anyone has a question and you're watching virtually on Discord or on Twitch.tv, please put your question into the presenter Q&A chat right in here. And I got the first one, all right? If you're here, if you're here, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you in too, okay? Corbin, can you read out?
You want me to read out the question?
Yes.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. I just clicked off of it and I'm using a trackpad. So our first question for you is, what is your favorite Xbox OS bugs and stories?
Yes.
Austin prepared me for this, so I do have an answer to the question.
I don't have a lot of the issue with working on Xbox is that when you do have a real bug, it's not an enjoyable experience because you're expected to fix it very, very quickly. And so the ones that are not fun are things like, you know, I forgot to add a semicolon and I broke the build that night, and then I had to like log on at night and fix it, and that's not very fun. But I will tell you about I have, in my very beginning of Xbox, I leaked a few features on accident. And fortunately, Xbox is very kind about it. But so the story with that is when I started on Xbox, it was January of 2020, which means we were 11 months away from shipping the Xbox Series X and S. And so like that was what we worked on for that year. Adding new features, removing ones that the new Xbox didn't support. And so it was a lot of like adding new code and ripping out new code. And so one of those things was a page for the dynamic backgrounds that we wanted to launch with the console when it launched. And I got to work on that page. Like I made the page where you can select your background and you can choose which one you want, which was a very cool feature. But I was supposed to hide the button that goes to that page under what we call live settings, which essentially is like, a server somewhere keeps track of like just bools that are true and false. And so when you turn on your Xbox, it determines whether like we're going to show you something or not show you something. Usually stuff that's in development, so that like we can still access it on a dev build, but that it won't be showed up on a live feature. Anyway, I screwed up something and I unbound that live settings to the button. And so like a couple weeks before we launched the new console, and this is supposed to be like a big surprise, like new backgrounds, they're moving, they're animated, they're cool. That button became available on our Xbox Insider rings. And so like hundreds of, like maybe in the thousands of people that were on Xbox Ones, Xbox One S and Xbox One X had access to this page. And it was especially awkward because these backgrounds, the reason why they're on the new consoles and not on the old ones is because the old consoles literally don't have the graphical capability to be able to run these backgrounds and also like be able to like suspend your games and do all that stuff like at the same time. There's like a memory capability there. And so all these people like were able to launch the page and see like the backgrounds for a little bit, but then it would like crash and like whatever. But so like I like revealed that we were doing this. 2, they got like kind of a preview of it, but like a very bad broken version of it. And then once we actually launched it with the console, there were a lot of complaints that were like, hey, I'm not seeing this page on my Xbox One. Why is that? And then us having to do this sort of awkward marketing beat of like, yeah, this feature's only for the new consoles. Like, you were never supposed to see that. And so that's my worst bug. Fortunately, Microsoft is not in the way they explained to me. Microsoft is not in the business of pointing fingers. It's in the business of like finding sources of failures and figuring out how we can avoid this in the future. So I had to apologize and have a talking to, but we move on from that. We learn when we get better.
That's awesome. All right, we have another question from Josh asking, so I've heard putting your game on Steam is the best bet to land a job in games instead of other game hosting websites. Would you say that is true?
So I can't speak to that, unfortunately, because I have not put a game on Steam yet. I've heard it's very tedious and difficult, and Steam doesn't give you a lot of documentations as an indie on how to like port your game properly for that. I would like to think that that's incorrect. Solely because there's so many other avenues for publishing games. Steam feels at this point a little arbitrary of a games retailer. Obviously, it's very, very popular. Probably still the most popular of all the PC retailers. But you have itch. I mean, like stuff like I don't know if any of you guys played Deltarune, which is the sort of sequel to Undertale. Deltarune Chapter 2 came out the other day, and it went live on itch before it went live on Steam, and it crashed itch.io's servers. So don't sleep on itch. Like, they're doing some good stuff, some cool stuff is on there. And so to that I say, like, I think that's a good goal, and if you want to do that, you should do it. And I think it's always a very impressive, benchmark to hit. But there's so many good retailers out there that I would feel remiss to say that you have to put a game on Steam, to be like legit or to be like taken seriously, kind of thing.
Awesome.
The common mistakes that I've seen is just around, at least for me, I guess, is just around treating working in a professional environment like you would a personal project, which is kind of no one's fault because you're expected to work on personal projects to get the experience to work in the professional environment. And then when you get to the professional environment, you're like, hell yeah, like, I know how I work. Like, I code things and I push to prod and I call it a day. And like, when we make bugs and we fix them and whatever. And then in the professional environment, they're like, no, stop. Like, you get to fix one bug and it has to be code reviewed by 3 people. And then maybe you can push to production. And that's definitely like a weird shift in environment that I think happens when you make that transition. But it all comes with time. I think people realize that that's how it goes sometimes. But I would say that's probably the common mistake that I see. I wouldn't even call it a mistake, a common learning experience that a lot of people go through when they first start. Great. Yes, that is a great question. That is truly that is like my like secret next hope step in my career. Especially just because I will say from my chats with people who work at game studios, working at a specifically Xbox game studio is like the most luxury way to work at a game studio. In other places, indie studios, whatever, the pressure's on. Like, you got to make a title that makes money because you've got a publisher or you've got employees to pay or both, and you've got deadlines to meet and all that kind of stuff, and it's stressful. When you work at Xbox Game Studios, you're backed up by Microsoft, which has plenty of resources to like give you time. For example, Halo Infinite was supposed to launch last year. People said they weren't stoked about the trailer, and so Microsoft said, delay it a full year. Like, take your time. Don't launch it if it's not ready. You don't really get that benefit working at smaller studios a lot of the time. And so that definitely is in my hopes of the future. But I will say, from what I've been seeing, Xbox Game Studios does generally hire more seasoned vets, probably because of those like additions they have. They don't need to waste time or money or resources on entry-level people. So I'm not sure if I'll ever actually make it that way, but that would definitely be cool. Also because we own such cool studios like Halo, Forza, In Exile. If I could work on Psychonauts 2, I'd be stoked. That would be like my dream job. But yeah, that's how I'm feeling about it. It's hard to say. It's not really a quantifiable amount, I would say. But making one game, I feel like, is a reasonable benchmark. Just that will give you so much knowledge, and it'll give you so much to talk about in an interview and stuff. just from like how you went from like literally an idea in your brain to like an executed product. And also potentially you might have to do part of the cycle where like you publish the game, people come back to you like, hey, this level is buggy, and you go and you fix bugs and you do those kinds of things. All of that is all really, really good experience. And I think, at least having one thing under your belt is always good. I definitely I re-recommend that extra credits video that I said earlier in the presentation, because I think I think there's a lot of parts that can be super overwhelming when you do that, especially if you're just starting out. Assuming none of you are multi-talented like artist, programmer, musician combo people. You usually like have one of those skills, maybe. And so it's very daunting to start working on your first game and you're like, I'm a programmer. I don't even know where to get art assets or how to animate things. Or if you're like, I'm an artist and I've never coded a day in my life. Like, where do I even start? Making yourself trudge through that mud to get to the end is like a crazy amount more experience than someone who has not done that process. Yeah. Ooh, that is a very good question. I don't know that it would have been harder, but I think it would have just been like literally random chance. I from my experience, and I've told y'all this story now, but like, I think to some degree, like part of university recruiting, and I think this happens at a lot of tech companies, is like they hire a bunch of people and then they kind of distribute them out to some degree randomly. Hopefully they take your preferences in a little bit, but like, I'm sure that I was not the only person who was graduating college and was like, I would like to work at Xbox. And even if they took my preferences in mind, there's a chance that I was, they had 12 openings for new hires at Xbox, and I was the 13th kid to say that I wanted to work at Xbox. I think it's a lot of chance. It's a lot of luck. But I'm a big believer in fate, and that like if you just continually like show that you're passionate about something and you care about something, like you will find your way there one way or another. And that's been true for me, and I hope that is true for others. Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know that I have a ton of regrets from undergrad. I feel like I honestly did a ton of stuff in college, between like, just engineering school already took up a lot of time, and then I also was in an improv group. I don't know if any of y'all have heard of Comco, but go to their shows. Great improv group on campus. I did that. I was in a professional fraternity at the same time, which took up a lot of time, and I squeezed in making games on the outside. I did a lot, and I liked all those things that I did. I think my regret would be that I didn't sort of network earlier, which is kind of a lame answer. But I like to this day, I have like people reach out to me and they're like, "Oh, like, do you know anyone, maybe from Michigan who like does like art for games or does like sound design for games?" And I'm like, I really don't. Like, I barely knew the kids that also made games at Michigan when I was there. And I feel that I wish I had a better network of other Wolverines that want to do this kind of stuff. Because there's a lot of y'all, and it's a cool community, and people are really passionate about this. So. Oh man, I feel y'all's pain. If it makes you feel better, I cannot get one. Which I know is like shocking. I know. I don't want to. So I have one obviously because I work there. But the one that I have is technically borrowed from Microsoft. It's like a take-home console, and it's running like, like a dog food like dev build that's very beta, like breaks a lot of the time. But I do have the console, and that's the only reason I have it. But if I ever leave the company, I lose that console. And I have a very real fear that if I leave, I won't be able to find another one. When the console launched, we got offered the opportunity to pre-order one retail console, like one not for Microsoft, or one not like barred from Microsoft. You got to pre-order one before pre-orders went live. Like I got like a week to like make a pre-order to confirm that I'd get a console. And that was my one opportunity to get an Xbox console, and I used it for a friend, and he's using it now. But it's hard. It's tough. I'm just hoping it becomes more available as time goes on. You know, there's a microchip shortage. It's not great. So I'm sorry. I wish I had better advice. But if it makes you feel better, even internally, it is very, very hard to find an Xbox nowadays. Yeah. I will let y'all know. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Just let me know when it's time. I'm not hearing anybody. Yeah. Corbin, can you hear me? Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks everybody for having me here today. Thanks Austin for the invite. Yeah, I am a professor up at Michigan State University, so hopefully that's okay being here. As you know, we've got a game program up here that has been in existence for quite some time. I actually taught the first game course here at MSU back in, I think it was 2000 or 2001. I kind of lose track. It's been so long ago. But at least 20 years ago. So I've dated myself now. But anyways, I'm here to talk about Will Win Games, which is kind of an exciting thing that I've been doing over the last pandemic time, and about the launch of our inaugural title, which is Plunder Panic. And I know Corbin, I think, showed the trailer up front. Maybe I'll show it just really quickly in case you missed that. It's just about a minute long, so let me let it roll here. Hopefully you can hear.
Set sail! Prepare to plunder!
All right, yeah, so that's our game. It's called Plunder Panic. It's a swashbuckling multiplayer action arcade game. I think some of the features is it's really, we say it's compelling party game. I think it was mentioned up front. There's multiple victory conditions in the game. It's two crews battling against each other for supremacy on the high seas. It supports both local and online multiplayer, which I'll talk a little bit more about. I think it really caters both to core game players as well as casual players. So we've had players of all types, all age ranges from young kids, 4 or 5 years old, up to grandparents play at different events that we've had. And it also has some esports potentials because it's definitely got that competitive, collaborative aspect to it. We took a lot of inspiration from some other indie games like Killer Queen, Nidhogg with the sword fighting, Towerfall, Duck Game. We also are big fans of Super Smash Brothers, and there's definitely an influence of that as well. This game we've actually built 3 times, which is kind of crazy. But we built it originally back in 2017. It was a short project, 2.5 months. We were doing a showcase up at the Traverse City Film Festival to showcase games and VR and things like that. And we wanted the centerpiece for our gallery that we were putting together. So We built the arcade cabinet that you see here in a rum barrel. We put that together in the last 2 weeks of the project. But the original game was sort of a throwback 8-bit graphics, very retro. We had the core gameplay in there. It was local multiplayer, so we supported up at that time, so 6 versus 6. And like I said, we built the barricade. It showed really well at the conference or at the film festival. We ended up submitting it to IndieCade out in Los Angeles, and it won the Audience Choice Award there. And we're like, wow, maybe we have something. But we threw it together so quickly, a rapid prototype, that we're like, now we need to rebuild it properly. So we rebuilt it as a 16-bit retro graphic, sort of a Sega era Super NES. We added a lot of different game modes and modifiers, basically pickups in the world that give you additional power. We added AI bots, so you can play, anywhere from just an individual playing against, AI bots up to, 6 versus 6 humans. And then we went on sort of an expo tour. So we showed it, after IndieCade, we showed it at South by Southwest. We showed it at the Indie Mega booth at PAX East in Boston. We showed it at a number of conferences, like Meaningful Play, which we host up here every other year. We showed it again at the Traverse City Film Festival. We showed it at UMACon in Detroit, and a number of barcades. So from having it out in the world, we knew that players really liked the game. And it was done originally under Michigan State University. I run a lab there called the Games for Entertainment and Learning Lab. This wasn't a class project. This was done out of my lab. All the students that worked on this were paid employees of the lab. But so we were trying to figure out, well, how do we bring this to market? We actually got interest from Nintendo, but Michigan State would not sign a contract with Nintendo. So we needed, we knew we needed to do something commercially outside of the university. We explored licensing the game to others out there, but like most things, you have to take your own baby and run with it and bring it out to the world. So we ended up licensing our own game from the university, which was a little bit awkward. And we had to navigate the conflict of interest and all that. But ultimately, the MSU is through their foundation is an investor in our company. We launched Will Win Games kind of in December of 2020, and right in the middle of the pandemic, we knew we couldn't launch a 12-person local multiplayer game that had a market in arcades and bars. So we basically rewrote the game a third time as from the ground up to create a true internet multiplayer game, and add all the polish that you need in a commercial title. So like I said, we received a number of awards and recognition, showed it at a lot of events, and we sought approvals, ultimately from not only Nintendo but Microsoft and Sony and Steam. This is kind of our production life cycle here, from the original prototype in summer of 2017 in the barrel, to the 16-bit version kind of in 2018, which we actually continued to develop and tinker across time. And of course, this is just, we had multiple projects going. This was just one of them. And oh, okay. I didn't know I was timed so much. So we released on September 17th on Steam. In early access, our plan is to continue to develop the game and refine it, add a bunch of additional things like matchmaking, and release it out on all the different consoles on February 1st of 2022. Really quickly, this is kind of our core crew today. Technically, we built it in Unity, but it's built within the Quantum engine, which is a third-party product made by Photon, or Exit Games, I believe, out of Germany. And yeah, it's available now on Steam, so go get it or wishlist it. Check it out. I think it's $9.99 initially. Our plan is to sell it for $19.99 once we get all the features in there and release it on console. So with that, I'm open to any questions, I guess, if there's time for that. Yeah, and it was like it was a big pill for us to swallow because, like I said, we invested quite a bit of time building this local multiplayer game, and to go to internet multiplayer, we also didn't have a lot of experience. We had tinkered with some of the Unity networking stuff before, and we'd used Photon, which is their sort of um, I don't know, relatively cheap open solution out there in the world on some like real simple games. But this was our first big endeavor into developing a true multiplayer game, internet multiplayer game. So it was a lot harder than we had anticipated. Originally, we thought we could get it done in about 1 to 2 months. It ultimately took us about six months, and I guess counting to some extent because we still don't have matchmaking in there yet. So yeah, it was a big effort to do that. As I mentioned, we rewrote the game from scratch. So we used Quantum, which is Photon's kind of premium plugin for Unity. It's essentially its own game engine. So we had to rewrite all the physics and all the gameplay in Quantum. It's still in C#, but it's its own engine. So it took quite a bit of time to do that. Hopefully that answered the question. Yes. So I mean, Quantum basically is its own networking solution. One of the things it does is it separates kind of the display from the networking, if that makes sense. So Unity is essentially the view of the game. All the graphics rendering, all the UI animations and things like that are done through Unity. Quantum is the engine for, like I said, all the physics and math and AI and so forth. So it gave us a lot, and it's built in its own cloud infrastructure, so we didn't have to worry about servers and all of that type of stuff. It also separates input out. So, from a game perspective, we kind of just look at the input, and the input is kind of what's sent over the network to some extent. So it was very lightweight in terms of the amount of data that's being sent across the network. And full disclosure, I program, and my background is computer science, but I did not do the programming in Quantum on this game. I was leading the effort and had a team of programmers doing that. So if you're really interested, I could definitely get them over here sometime in a future meeting to talk about. Awesome. We are doing it ourselves. Yeah, we've got a stack of about 10 dev kits sitting in our new office. We just moved into our office on Monday. We were doing everything remote up till our launch, on Friday, this last Friday. So we've got a big stack of, Xbox and PlayStation and the Switch dev kits ready to go. We're hoping to hit, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox, you know, all the latest Xbox versions, Series X, Series S, Xbox One, and so forth. As well as obviously the Switch. So yeah, we are doing it ourselves. We've already ported it to Switch, and it's working really well on Switch. So we're pretty confident that we can, hit the other platforms. But there's always a lot of unknowns when you get into game development. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Good question. I mean, we would love to do it. It's a lot of fun playing around the barrel, and when you get a bunch of people together, there's lots of shouting and screaming. It's a really good time. So we would love to be able to do that at some point. We're more software people than hardware people, so figuring out the manufacturing of the barrel and the distributing it out in the world, we might end up ultimately partnering with somebody that is on that side of things. But yeah, we would love to do that at some point. And I know Killer Queen was mentioned early on. They kind of went the opposite route. They did the arcade first, and then they did their console version. We're doing it the other way around. But I think this does have a place in barcades and arcades. And we've actually shown it in there's a local barcade up here called the Grid, and it was a blast having it there for a little while. So certainly. You guys have questions? So we are adding things like the matchmaking, which isn't there right now. You can do private rooms, sort of like a Jackbox game or Among Us, and you can do local multiplayer. So you can do up to 12 people local if your computer supports it and you have a big USB hub. If you're doing online, you can mix local and online, so you can do up to 4 local combined with other people online, and there is AI in the game. So to answer your question, we are adding matchmaking, so you individually can be paired with other people out in the world. We're adding a lot of esports features for like player rankings and tracking of players. A lot of polish, additional stages, levels, that sort of thing. And the price tag may be a little bit in flux. We're figuring it out. When we looked at a lot of the comparables out there, they were right around the $19.99 price tag. So yeah, we don't want to oversell or undersell. So we're looking to look at comparables to try to figure it out as well. Yeah, good question. So in the Gel Lab, which is a research, I saw the question earlier and I think it was answered, but the Gel Lab is a research and development lab at MSU. And we typically do grant-related work, National Science Foundation, NIH, NASA, that sort of thing. So a lot of times when we're developing it, we're funded to develop it, and then it's sort of like public property when we're done. So we put out a lot of games in the, on the App Store, Google Play, and on the web and things like that. So, in essence, we publish things, but we haven't really sold them because, we're funded by tax dollars to put them out there. This game was very different. We weren't funded by any tax dollars. It was, more of a passion project. And this wasn't really a student project. There were students, student employees on the development team, but it was my vision with my my partner in the lab at the time, Will Jeffrey, who is now part of the company after some time at Disney. But to directly answer your question, yes, we would love to continue to bring future, MSU IP to market and possibly student IP. We've had lots of students, I'm sure you have as well, that are passionate about making games and want to bring it to market, and they might not be as passionate about the business side or have the expertise on the business side. So, much like I think Yeti Games and Underbite Games did in the Grand Rapids area, we would love to be a stepping stone for some of those students and offering, first time job, it's, you always got to get the 5 years of experience, right? But we know our students have great experience coming out of the program, as I'm sure yours do as well. And, we would love to offer, those first jobs and help grow the Michigan game development community and the economy here and create a nice ecosystem. So certainly that's, that is our goal with Whirlwind Games beyond Plunder Panic. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
That I am. Oh yeah. All right. So it's gonna have this weird. All right. Oh, sorry. What? Okay. Sorry about that. You broke up a bit. So there's a lot of changes that we. So I'm currently working on this project for Game Jam. It's due out in December 2nd. And through planning and having a lot of other people, we made a lot of different design decisions. But first, I actually want to kind of showcase on the graphical side. No boring presentations right here. So we have a fully rotational camera in the game. Fully works. This was actually a big pain to implement. There's a lot of code that was involved trying to get like the billboard effect and the sprite blending effect, depending on your like camera angle. And also got a lot of the player controller in currently. You can jump, sprint, like basic stuff like that. Then we got some of the battle scene or battle system going too. That was something that I was talking about last time, but we were unsure where the battle system would do or where it would go. So we determined that we want to kind of have a mix between like turn-based combat, traditionally you see in a lot of JRPGs, and it's not working fantastic, in the game. So you would just like point, click, and shoot enemies, and kind of go from there. When it comes to the battle system, it would have different kinds of guns, which, you know, one attack would be like a burst fire against enemies, another one would be a single shot. And that's pretty much on the gameplay side we got done. But we made a lot of different design decisions to the game itself. One of them being we are appealing to a particular niche. With the genre of games that we are, within the genre we're working in, it's mostly like visual novel players and people who don't really like action elements in video games. So we're really playing into our team strengths and just reorganizing and rethinking our design philosophy, kind of making the game more story-driven, more about the world than it is about like testing the player on platforming or combat or any of those kind of things. We're also really playing into our strength of creating visuals as well, like striking visuals when it comes to character design and the environment art and all that. And with that being said, it really helped lighten the load for the team because the initial plans were very ambitious for a project that would only go on for 4 months. And I can kind of tell the team was like, oh, I don't want to implement all this stuff. And also, since players of this niche genre were working in didn't want it either, it was kind of a win-win for the both parties in that way. But yeah, there's a lot of progress we knocked out this month. Next month is more going to be about trying to implement some of the content, wrapping up the battle system, implementing NPCs, and starting to implement all the models and other assets that come with this game. And yeah, that's pretty much it for I could take questions now. Oh, absolutely, I could do that. Oh boy. Yeah, sure. So it's actually a remake of a previous game I did called Lunar Encore. This was for a month-long game jam, and decided to do a remake of this game, doing it 2 months before the game jam we're doing it for it now. And there was a lot of changes we made from a story perspective and visual perspective too. But most of the stuff that remained the same is some of the reused assets, like character art or character sprites. So I wish the audio would actually work here, but I'm actually just going to skip to the gameplay here. So the original game, there was a long, drawn-out visual novel segment, so you can kind of see that we're kind of reusing the same art here. We're kind of changing it because you can notice like there's a melee attack and there's a puzzle right here. We're kind of axing these elements out of the game because, for one, that's not like our team's strength in terms of our design. We're more focusing on like the story content. As we found out through other players and playtesting, that the story content and the visuals were definitely the strongest point of the game. But yep, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so there you go. So we used the standard Unity pipeline. Soulfleet is in the chat. He wrote the lighting system for this game. We'll probably go into detail about it. But for a lot of this to work, we just had to use the standard Unity shader. We placed a normal map on all the sprites and characters. I can actually show right now. So we just used the normal map here, kind of get everything working together. And just generally using Unity's 3D pipeline. That was how we were able to achieve that. So you mean in like a gameplay perspective, or like a kind of like the development goals? If it's from a gameplay. Okay, so from a gameplay perspective, we changed it because, for one, deadline. For another one is that because the players of this genre we're working in are more visual novel players and don't like action content. This is done through us our team working in this genre before, and we receive a lot of feedback because these are done for larger game jams. And what we found is that players don't really like platforming or like intense combat situations. So that's why we're just kind of changing the gameplay and the style of the game for itself. Oh boy. So I met him through the Discord server for these game jams, or like people that a team member knew. There was only one VA for the original game that we're bringing back for this version too. But she's gonna play less characters this time. She's only gonna play like the main character and the cat potentially. But in the original game, she played all 4 characters. There was like 2 other characters that I wasn't able to show off. So let me pull that up. Oh, okay. So there's a lot of influences. This is from our GDD. So usually, like, we have a lot of anime influences, particularly in the shoujo and yuri genres. When it comes to like the genre of the game itself, we're more leaning into like JRPGs. And here's some examples, like the 3 main examples that our team had been looking at. Octopath Traveler for the visuals, Xenogears for how we want to kind of handle the story and also kind of handle like the theming, as well as like music and certain mechanics in that game. And when it comes to a lot of the gameplay stuff in the battle system we're more looking at like the new World Ends With You game. And then that's pretty much our main pillars. There's like a couple of others we put in here, but those are the games that we're definitely leaning into more. So yeah, it's gonna be more like 2D characters in a 3D environment. So partially 2D, 2.5D. Yeah, it's a work in progress title. It is a 2.5D RPG that's story driven and has shooter mechanics for the battle system. From a story perspective, we're still working on it, but it's more like a contemporary setting that's focused on like focused on like magical girls and weird other fantasy elements. So we do mostly itch.io. Usually, like itch.io will have a dedicated comment section for if it's a game jam entry. So we usually just kind of glean from that. I also talked to the top creators who made like the most popular games in the genre we're working in, and they gave me some feedback on that too. And that's where we generally received it: Discord, individual players, and itch.io or other devs. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello? Oh, okay. Like, hear my. Yes. You all hear me and see the screen? All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Yusuke Hasegawa, also known as Juicy Chicken online. I am a game developer working at Gaudium Studios in Ann Arbor. And also on my own time, I also make games. So today I'd like to talk about a game I made on my own time called Waifu Destiny. This is a Tinder simulator with anime girls. And that's about it. Originally released about a year ago. There's a major update with the incorporation of Google's OpenAI to generate like conversations as part of the game loop now. And by the way, I'll say it's available on Google Play currently. If anyone wants to check it out, Waifu Destiny. It says beta because I'm a beta tester, but you should get the full app if you download it. I guess so. I'll go over the whole game real quick. This is it running in an emulator. Is it showing up? So you get these cards representing the girls, and you can like or pass based on whatever criteria you choose. Oops. I'm out of slots, so I have to get rid of a contact there. After a while, you get a match, and you can chat with them. You can say whatever you want, and it'll, based on this generated person's profile, it'll generate a message back to you. And I made an auto feature where it'll just say something for you if you don't want to come up with stuff on your own. And as a game developer, it's interesting to watch because I have no idea what's going to happen or what they're going to say. And I think that's a part of game dev I like a lot. If you make it procedural, it's interesting for the developer as well when you have to play it over and over. So once you chat for a while, I'm not even reading this, but you can go on a date with them, which is just a slot machine here. And you're trying to match 3 of the same symbols. And then as you go on a successful date, you collect these memories and you put it on the bingo board, and you're trying to make these bingos as like, oh, I want a date with a beer involved or dice involved. And that's the game. At the core, it's an idle game. The more you chat, the more dates you can go on. The more dates you go on, the more memories you make, and then you can try to complete the bingos as part of the loop. Any question? Yes, so Any question? I can't tell if the crowd's like entertained. Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Oh yes. I this current time there's no plan to bring it to iOS. That's just my capabilities at home as a single dev. If it takes off, I'll port it. Well, also I'm sharing from Windows, so you can get Android emulators if you're looking to play. I have, and I had that suggested many times, um, but it was not part of my vision to do that. I don't know. Eh, It'd just be a lot of more work. Yeah, it's GPT-3. The integration actually really easy because all I'm doing is making web calls through just to the endpoint. And here's like is an example of the playground here. So if you prompt GPT-3 with this bold text and submit it, it'll spit back out this new text to complete it, and that's what I'm putting in the text box for the as like what the girl says to you. So the integration took about a week, and it was pretty simple. Hardest part's getting a key. There is a cost based on how long of a request you make, but it's pretty insignificant because I don't. That's kind of why I put it in the idle game because it limits how many messages you can send to it, and also I put in an artificial like time to make it just last longer, so you can't keep spamming it from within the game as much. So I'm not too worried about the cost, and it's been the first. Oh, sorry. It's been the first month since I had to start paying. I was on a free trial for a while, so it should I can set like hard stops on if it goes $100 per month on the API cost, just shut it off. So I do have those measures set in place. I mean, the dialogue is completely your choice, as you can type every character you want in the chat here if you don't use the auto function. So I feel like that's I don't know if it doesn't it feels redundant because you want choices, but you have as all the choices you almost have too much choice as an empty text box. This game is an amalgamation of game mechanics and the assets I have, and just like things I can do in Unity. And I don't know if there's anything specific you're asking about the game mechanics, but it started with just it'd be funny if I took all these faces and made like a swipe simulator. And it's like, then of course you have to have like your contacts list oh, and then what do you have to do to it? And I think this date was a big inspiration too. Like I wanted to make a simple game um that anyone could play, because like the whole gist of the game was to just appreciate these girls and like and just the randomness of the people that you match with. But it's just kind of forced mechanics on top of, I guess, the simulation. New characters within the game. I mean, the all the images and their corresponding data about, their job height and all these things are generated, but just like flat random. There's no AI involved. Um, but that could be interesting. I don't know what benefit it would bring. All right, thank you. I'm Juicy Chicken on Twitter. This is Waifu Destiny. Check it out. Thank you.